And I am so thrilled to be here with you. We're in the third day of an 8-day, 12-state tour to make sure we do everything we can to win, and we are going to win in Iowa with your help. Thank you, guys. I really do appreciate Tim. What a great story. So, a veteran, Air Force veteran, who is now working in one of the most innovative industries in this country, the wind industry, and has decided to take his expertise in that industry to come back and teach. I just toured the industrial program here at Kirkwood. You've got something here that is very remarkable, and I suspect that many of you who are students here or alums understand it. But Tim's service is something I really appreciate, and I'm going to return to the themes that he mentioned about the military in a little bit later, because it is something that's pretty important. But I want to tell you that I'm not here by accident. Iowa is incredibly important, battleground state. You know it around the caucuses, but in the general election, very close state, and we're here because we definitely need to win. And I have to admit, I'm here for one other reason. My campaign manager's from Cedar Rapids, so I don't know where Matt Paul is. Where is he? All right. Well, of course, he's back on a conference call, back in the back room, I guess. But he wanted to make sure that we came, and I also have a really dear friend here, your former mayor, Lee Clancy, who I think is sitting right over here. Right over here. Lee, thank you. So good to be with you. And we had a great pre-program. Congressman Loebsack, Reverend Epps, Monica Vernon, Stephanie Williams. We've also got a lot of elected officials here. I had a chance to meet with a number of them backstage. Mike Fitzgerald, Liz Mathis, Wally Horn, Rob Hogg, Kirsten Running Marquardt, Todd Taylor, Dave Jacoby, Amy Nielsen, Justin Shields, Tyler Olson. It's good to see a lot of Dems in office and Dems running for office. You know, I think you know, politics is tough these days. It is hard. It's hard to do it. It's a sacrifice of family time. It's a sacrifice of privacy. And so those that do it really deserve our support. And so thank you to so many of you who are in office for coming here and expressing your support for me and the ticket. Give another round of applause for all the elected officials who are here. Now, I am particularly glad to be here. I grew up in Kansas City, and part of my family on my mom's side is from Fort Madison. And so as a kid, we used to come to Iowa for family. And I have dear friends in Maquoketa and Charles City and Des Moines. One of my best friends in life is in Des Moines, and he even persuaded me to wear spandex and ride on ragbri across the state of Iowa in 1996, 20 years ago. My prayer is that none of those photos can be found by opposition researchers. But growing up in Kansas and coming from a family where both of my grandparents on both sides were farmers, I feel like we've got a connection. I also feel like I've got a connection because in Virginia is a state that people think about as a high-tech state, and we are, but ag and forestry is still the number one industry sector in Virginia, still the number one producer of our economy, and there's not even a close second. So in that sense, with Iowa's great ag tradition, we have a connection. And then just your commitment to grassroots democracy. Iowa's a grassroots place. And in a time where it seems like some people think it's about negative TV ads, or how much you can pay consultants, the person-to-person aspect of Iowa politics is something that's really appealing, and that kind of offers a lesson to us, not only about the way it used to be, but also the way it's supposed to be and the way it still can be. So thank you for setting a good example of how to do politics. Go Iowa, you guys do it very, very well here. So I just had a great tour here at Kirkwood. I grew up in a house where my dad ran an ironworking shop in the stockyards of Kansas City. Ironworker organized. 5 employees in a tough year, 7 or 8 in a good year, not a big business, plus my mom and my 2 brothers and me. And to see this program that is training skilled workers in wind energy and other innovative career and technical fields is so exciting. After I grew up working in my dad's shop, I took a year off in 1980 and 81 from law school, and I went and served as a principal of a career and technical program in Honduras with Jesuit missionaries. I taught kids to be welders and carpenters. I know the power of trades and technical training, and that's what's done so well here at Kirkwood and across Iowa in our community colleges. So feel very comfortable standing on this stage. Let me do a couple of things. I want to tell you why I'm so proud to be on a ticket and be a partner with Hillary Clinton. Then I want to tell you what's at stake in this election with really a focus on two things: jobs, and because of Tim's introduction, I just want to talk a little bit about that issue of commander-in-chief. Let me talk about both of those. And then, what do we need to do to win? So I'll start with why I'm so proud to be on the ticket. I got to admit, it's pretty neat. Now, I mean, it's pretty neat. I'm having a good time. Hillary called me July 22, which is a Friday, at 7:32 p.m. Not like I'm counting or anything. I mean, not like it was a memorable moment in my life. And she called and asked if I would join her. She said, I want a governing partner. You've been a mayor, you've been a governor, you're a senator. You can be a governing partner. You're on the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee. You care about our troops and about America's role in the world. You can be a governing partner. And, of course, I was thrilled to say yes immediately because, as Tim said, and President Obama said this so well at the convention, Hillary Clinton has got to be the most qualified person that either party has put up to be president for a very long time and maybe ever. First Lady of Arkansas, First Lady of the United States, U.S. Senator, Secretary of State, deep network of relationships around this country and around this world. So, of course, when somebody who is that good, who has that deep a record, says, I want you to be my partner, wow, how humbling is that? I mean, I grew up in a non-political family where we talked about how the Kansas City Royals were doing, you know, and to be asked to be on a ticket by such a great public servant was really powerful. But there was another reason for me that made it extremely special. When Hillary took the nomination Thursday night in Philadelphia, and by the way, wasn't the convention great? I mean, it was a great convention. If you watched the Democratic convention, what you saw was upbeat, positive, can-do, optimistic, not sugarcoating challenges, of which there are many at home and abroad, but you saw a patriotic can-do party. If you watched the Republican convention, you saw something very, very different. It was like Gotham City 5, you know, kind of dark and disturbing, and people said to me, wow, that's a really negative view of America. I said, folks, that's no view of America. That's a guided tour through Donald J. Trump's mind, which is a very scary place to be. A very scary place to be. But when Hillary took the stage and I came out with her and the balloons were falling, my 81-year-old mom lives in Kansas City. I'm having dinner with her and my dad and my brothers and their families tonight. She was standing on the stage with me. And she came over and said, Tim, this is the greatest night of my life. Now, part of that was because of me. I don't think she would have been on stage had I not been on the ticket. So I think part of it was because of me. But a lot of what my mom was saying is, here I am standing on this stage when a qualified woman is being nominated by a major party to be president of the United States. Never happened before in the history of this country. And I'm standing right here catching balloons right at the moment. And when my mother said that to me, here's what I thought about. I've been in politics for 22 years, local, state, federal. I've been a national party chair. My entire political career has been built on the support of very strong women. My wife, my mom, campaign managers, campaign volunteers, donors, cabinet secretaries when I was governor. Who are our voters in this country? Majority are women. Who are our Democratic voters? A real majority women. I have been so benefited as a strong man to have a great career in politics because of the support of strong women. And the ability to stand up as a strong man and support a strong woman to be president of the United States and make history in the way our nation keeps doing. We keep making history by knocking down barriers and moving ahead. Wow, what an exciting thing. It's a little bit of payback for the 22 years of strong women supporting me. And I know that there's a lot of strong men in this country who feel exactly the same way. They've been supported by strong women every step of the way, and they're excited to support a strong woman to be president of the United States. So I am very proud to be on this ticket. I want to talk about what's at stake. And I said I'd talk about two things. I want to talk about jobs, and I want to talk about the commander-in-chief thing, and then talk about how to win. Jobs. I want to make it simple. I used to try jury cases. I would try to make it simple. Let me make it simple. Do you want a you're hired president or a you're fired president? I mean, it's that simple, folks. It is that simple. Hillary Clinton will be a you're hired president. One of the reasons she picked me is because I've been a mayor and I've been a governor and I've done an awful lot of economic development to try to bring jobs to my city, try to bring jobs to my state. She is making as the first priority of this campaign that we create an economy that doesn't just work for some, but that works for everybody. Our president had to turn around an economy in free fall, the worst recession since the 1930s. He's turned it around. We've added 15 million jobs. We've cut the unemployment rate in half, and that's great, but we also know there are pockets, there are communities, there are industries, there are regions, there are individuals that still haven't found that ladder that they can climb to success. As we've come out of a recession, there's been growth, but too often you've seen growth go to a few companies, a few individuals, and not be shared in terms of prosperity. And so Hillary Clinton says, measure us by this. We are going to create an economy where we can have growth, that's good, but where growth is more broadly shared. And she has said in the first 100 days, and having worked in the Senate, I expect to be working a lot on this with her. In the first 100 days, we're going to present the most ambitious jobs plan to Congress since World War II. And she's been specific about how she's going to do it and how she's going to pay for it. Let me take a couple of minutes and just talk about that and then contrast it with a you're fired president. Okay, Hillary Clinton's 5-point plan. The first is investments in key industries, infrastructure, building roads, rail, broadband, electricity grid, airports. When you do that kind of investment, you hire people right away, which is great. But then you live off that raised platform, the raised infrastructure platform, better broadband in our rural communities. You live off that for decades. So we'll do that. We'll invest in industries that are advanced and moving forward, where Iowa has been so successful, alternative energy. I mean, that's so important that we do it. Wind and solar, we'll invest in those. We'll invest in research at great institutions like your universities here, because our research dollars spin off ideas and cures and patents and new products that then get used to jazz up the economy and then also to help us lead the world in key industries of tomorrow. So first thing we'll do is we'll make those investments. Second thing we'll do, we'll make sure the workforce has the skills that they need. And that's why we're here at Kirkwood, because Kirkwood is a great example of this second pillar, a great example of the second pillar. Let's start with making pre-K, early childhood education, more accessible. How many educators do we have? Applaud if you're an educator. Okay. I think everybody knows when you do more early childhood education, it really works. I heard a sermon in a church once, and the topic of the sermon was, it's easier to build a child than repair an adult. Start early, especially with kids who come from challenged backgrounds, and then they'll be more successful. And so we'll do that. In K-12, we will, let our great teachers and localities use more creativity and flexibility. Not a lot of top-down stuff, right? Not a lot of top-down stuff. We got to make sure that all of our students are succeeding, but local teachers and school boards know the best way to do that. And so more flexibility and creativity at the local level, more recognition and celebration of good teachers. Sometimes, if you're a teacher, sometimes you think the only thing policymakers talk about is we got to figure out ways to get rid of bad teachers. No, we got to figure out ways to keep good teachers. That's what the issue. Get our best people in the classroom and enable them to stay and make a career out of it. And that's what we'll do. And then at the college level, Hillary has a bold plan to make college debt-free and to focus on making community college free for most Americans. This is something that's very, very doable because other nations do it. Other nations that aren't as rich as us do it, and we can do it too. What's magic about free compulsory education K-12? We've been doing that a long time, but we all know that you need education past high school. Some kind of education might be in a community college campus, might be an apprenticeship program, might be a career and technical program. You need some skills past high school to succeed. And so let's broaden the notion of what education is in this country. And then finally, let's honor apprenticeships and trades and career programs like the ones you have here. Because, I'll tell you just a story. I gave a graduation speech recently at a wonderful career and technical program, the Newport News Shipyard. They train people who do the most complicated manufacturing job on planet Earth, building nuclear aircraft carriers and subs. 3-year program. The admission rate into this apprenticeship program, which is nearly 100 years old, is less than the admissions rate into Harvard. Harvard takes 5.9% of their grads. This program takes 5.2% of their grads. But when they graduate after 3 years, they have a guaranteed job with a good income, doing something really patriotic that they feel good about every day, and we do not count them as having a higher ed degree because they've come through a career and technical program, not a college. Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, shouldn't we value people who graduate from apprenticeship or technical programs in the same way we value people who have a college degree? Of course we should. And so that's an important piece, a very important piece. Third, shared prosperity. Let's benefit companies that do profit sharing. Let's benefit companies that keep jobs here. And let's put an exit tax on companies that take tax benefits and then ship jobs overseas and not let them deduct those costs as just the normal cost of doing business. We ought to share prosperity in this country. Fourth, we need to do things to make the work-life balance work out a little better. Child care tax credit. That's really important. Child care is too expensive. It takes too much of income, so we should do that. Let's pay women equal pay for equal work, for gosh sake. Does that sound so complicated? Does that sound so complicated? And let's get the minimum wage up to the place where it's a livable wage. Now, this is very, very important. Usually to say increase the minimum wage, everybody gets it, it's an applause line, and we move on. But I want to just go into this because there's a philosophy behind this. It's not just a policy. What do we tell our kids? Hard work is important. Work hard. You got to work hard. That's what we say. That's what we say. But if you work in this country for minimum wage, and a lot of people do, if you work full-time for minimum wage, and a lot of people do, and about 65% of minimum wage workers are women, if you do that, if you have a dependent or two, you are below the poverty level. So what does that mean about what we say? We tell them, now work is really important. We really want you to work hard. But we have policies that if you work hard, you're going to be below the poverty level. If we value work, if we value workers, if we think work is important, then you have to have policies that show you value work and that people who will work hard will not be below the poverty level. That's why it is important to raise the minimum wage so that nobody working full-time in this country is below the poverty level. It's so important. It's a statement of our values. Statement of our values. And then the last piece is Hillary even says, and here's how we're going to pay for it. She doesn't just say, I'm going to do these things and, we'll figure it out later or we'll just run up the deficit. No. We're not going to run up the deficit. We're going to pay for it. And how are we going to pay for it? Hillary says this. Look, we've come out of the recession and we're growing. That's good. But the growth is going to folks at the top end, big financial institutions, some of the biggest corporations, wealthy individuals. We need to make sure that they are paying their fair share and then plow those extra tax dollars into these programs. And you know what? If we do, the very people that are going to pay a little bit more, the very institutions that will pay a little bit more are actually going to do a lot better because everybody benefits when there's more opportunity for more people in this country. And that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it will be in a Clinton administration. I think you get this so well in Iowa because you've already been, I just saw it here, you've already been at the front of an amazing new industry where we can claim global leadership, the alternative energy industry. What I saw with folks from Nordex over here getting training on wind turbine maintenance and repair. As Tim said, you guys are now nearly a third of your power from wind energy, which makes you number 2 in the country on this. This is a very powerful thing. And I worked in the Senate to make sure we extended the tax credits last year so that we could make those investments in wind and solar. And everybody would know it would be a good investment. And we're going to do the same thing on the solar side. So I've just laid out 5 things that Hillary's going to do, and that's why I say she is a you're hired president. Now let me go to Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Now, I do think it's kind of poetic justice that before Donald Trump ran for president, the two words we most associated with Donald Trump were, "You're fired," right, from his TV show. So that's how we think of the guy. And Maya Angelou says, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And he says, "You're fired" a lot, and he's going to be a "you're fired" president. He doesn't give you a lot of details with his plans. He tends just to say, "We're going to be rich, believe me. We're going to build a wall to Mexico, and they're going to pay for it, believe me. We're going to beat ISIS so fast, believe me." Is there anybody in this room who believes one word that Donald Trump says? I mean, and you shouldn't, because there's a long history that's well documented. When people believe Donald Trump, they get hurt. Contractors who work with him on projects, they're proud to build a casino or build a golf course clubhouse. At the end of the day, they get stiffed. They don't get paid. They have to sue to get paid. They settle for cents on the dollar. Some of them even go bankrupt because they believed Donald Trump. Retirees in condo properties in Florida gave them thousands of dollars, never got their condo, lost money. They got hurt because they believed Donald Trump. Students saw a slick brochure or ad about how Trump U would change their life, and they gave them thousands of bucks. And a lot of these students were veterans, and they got something that wasn't worth the paper it was written on. They got hurt because they believed Donald Trump. We cannot just get tricked by Trump. We cannot just accept him when he says, "Believe me." And so his plan, without the details, is one that's a little hard to get a fix on. But here's what I'm going to say to you. I'm not going to ask you to believe me on Donald Trump being a "you're hired" guy. Here's what Moody's Analytics says. Moody's is the company that is the best nonpartisan economic judge of economic plans. They're not Democrats. The head of Moody's is a guy named Mark Zandi, who was John McCain's chief economist in 2008 during the campaign. They have analyzed the Hillary Clinton plan and the Donald Trump plan, and here's what they find. If Hillary Clinton is president and we implement the 5 points I've just described, by the end of her first term, we will have added 10 million more jobs in the American economy. That's what we will have added. And we will be in a lengthy recovery. That's why I said Hillary Clinton will be a "you're hired" president. It's not just me saying so. That's what the economists say. Now, they've looked at the Trump plan too. And here's what they say about the Trump plan. If Donald Trump's plan is implemented, at the end of the first 4 years, America will have lost 3.5 million jobs, and we will be, quote, in a lengthy recession. 10 million up or 3.5 million down. Recovery or recession. Donald Trump will be a "you're fired" president. Hillary Clinton will be a "you're hired" president. We are not gullible people. We're smart people. We're not going to be tricked by Trump, and we are going to pick a "you're hired" president with Hillary Clinton. Now, some of you probably have been following this story. Last Friday, Hillary Clinton released her tax returns for 2015, and my wife Ann and I released 10 years of our tax returns. I did ask her permission before I did that, so that was smart of me to remember to do that. We've released our tax returns because here's what we believe. The American public has a right to know, Independent, Democratic, Republican, they have a right to know what our financial situation is. Are we connected to anybody that they might have questions about? Do we have unusual debts? They have a right to know that. We're you know, people are entitled to privacy, but if you're running to be vice president or president, people have a right to know. Every presidential candidate of a major party since Richard Milhouse Nixon, and including Richard Nixon, whose ethical standards were not at the peak, have released their tax returns because they believe the American public has a right to know. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is saying, "I'm not going to give you my tax returns." Now, there's a lot of speculation about why. But I want to get into something that I think is pretty important about this, and it bears on what Tim said, the role of Commander-in-Chief. I'm on the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Relations Committee. Virginia is very connected to the military. I'm one of 2 U.S. senators who have a child in the military. Iowa is a very patriotic pro-military state. Donald Trump, throughout his life, has bragged over and over again about how he uses every dodge he can to avoid paying any taxes if he can get away with it. And on a couple of occasions when he's applied for like casino licenses, he's had to turn over tax records in the 80s and 90s, and on a couple of occasions they showed, with a phalanx of lawyers and accountants and whatever, he was able to avoid paying any federal taxes. All right, well that's, I guess that's your right to do, but now he's running to be commander-in-chief. And now Donald Trump says, I'm going to be great for the military. Who do you think pays for the military? For the 2 million American young men and women who volunteer in a time of war to serve their nation in a patriotic way, risking their lives, risking their health. Who is it that pays? It's us. We don't love taxes. I mean, nobody does. But we know it's part of being a civilized nation that you have an obligation to society and that you want to contribute to support the things that are important, like our military. And yet Donald Trump, his whole life has been bragging about how he's trying to skate out of that. Don't tell me, after you've spent your whole life trying to skate out of paying taxes, that you're suddenly going to be a commander-in-chief and support the military. He's been stiffing the military his whole life, and there's no reason to believe he will suddenly be supportive of the military. I mean, and then everybody here knows how important service to veterans are. Our VA services, but more broadly, we make a promise. And when people leave, we got to keep up with that promise. We don't need to do less for veterans. We've got to be better at making sure we honor the obligations that we have to our veterans. In fact, while I'm asking about this, raise your hand if you're veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or if you're a military family. Just raise your hand. Okay, well, we got a good number here. So we want to make sure that we honor our obligations to veterans. Donald Trump says, I'm going to be great for veterans. I'm going to be great for veterans. But if that tax return shows that he's been trying to skate out of paying any taxes, then he spent his whole life stiffing veterans. You can't tell me, after you've lived one way your whole life, that suddenly, magically, believe me, I'm going to be great for veterans. No, actions speak louder than words. Deeds speak louder than campaign promises. And Donald Trump has a record of actions and deeds that cut directly against it. And it's not only that. Tim mentioned these. Donald Trump started off this campaign ridiculing John McCain, who was my armed services chair. Somebody said John McCain is a hero. He was a POW. No, he isn't a hero. He shouldn't have gotten caught. I don't honor him as a hero. He shouldn't have been a prisoner. I mean, what rational person would even have that thought come into their mind, much less have the words come out of their lips? That is an ignorant, insensitive, thick-headed comment, and this guy wants to be commander-in-chief. He shouldn't be within 10 time zones of being commander-in-chief with comments like that. And then during the debates in the campaign, Tim, I don't know if you saw this, during the debates, he said over and over again, the American military is a disaster. Let me tell you how that plays in Virginia, and I'm sure it plays the same way here. For everybody that raised their hand because they're in a military family or they're active duty, guard, reserve, or a veteran, when you see these young people who volunteer to serve in a time of war, and when you see that, when you experience it, and then you see the guy who's commander-in-chief just walking around trashing them, I do not want a commander-in-chief who talks about our military with disrespect and contempt. I want a commander-in-chief like Hillary Clinton, who's worked with our military, who has worked with military families, and who understands we've got to show our military and our veterans respect and compassion and dignity. And that's a huge difference in this race, a huge difference. And then if that wasn't all enough, stiffing the military and not paying taxes, going after John McCain, saying the American military is a disaster. I know you saw the way Donald Trump went after this Virginia family, the Kaine family, who spoke at the convention, who talked about their horrible loss of their son, proud Muslim, who was a proud patriot, who died saving the lives of his colleagues when he was deployed overseas. and the Kaine family challenged Trump for suggesting that Muslims were second-class citizens and said, hold on a second here. You know, we've given the ultimate sacrifice as parents. Don't be talking us down because of the religion that we worship, for gosh sake. And then Donald Trump, he couldn't leave well enough alone, so he started to go after this family and say negative things about him and say negative things about Captain Kaine's mother because she was so emotional that she couldn't give a speech in front of the convention. And so Donald was going after her. What does that show about the character of this individual? To go after a Gold Star family? Are you kidding me? There has never been a candidate in the history of this country to be president and commander-in-chief who has acted in such an outrageous way toward people who serve this country. And we have to make sure that he is not elected and Hillary Clinton is to be our next commander-in-chief. We have to. We have to. And you know what? Hillary. And just to do one more point on the comparison, one more point on the comparison on this, and then I'm going to conclude and just talk about how we win. Trump was mad because the Kaine family said some negative things about him. In the Republican convention in Cleveland, they just put up one speaker after the next to trash Hillary Clinton. And they put up parents and family members of people who had lost their consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Every president has suffered through instances like this because it's a big, bad, dangerous world out there. And Americans who serve abroad, whether it's Marines or State Department personnel in Beirut, Lebanon during the Reagan administration, or people on the USS Cole during the Bush administration, or folks during the Clinton administration or the second Bush administration, every president deals with tough situations like that. At the Republican convention, they had people standing up there who had lost loved ones to Benghazi. Whatever we think about what they said, our heart's got to go out to them, obviously. Some wonderful public servants lost their lives. They said some negative things about Hillary. Did you see Hillary Clinton interrupt her campaign and start to go after grieving parents who had lost somebody on an attack on one of her embassy? No, because she has the heart of sympathy for people who've lost, and she's not going to go after them. She feels for them. I've talked to her about it. She feels Benghazi very personally because Chris Stevens, the ambassador, there was somebody she knew very, very well. But she wouldn't go after somebody who criticized her. That is beneath what a president does. Hillary's classier than that. Hillary's smarter than that. Hillary's more compassionate than that. Hillary is better judgment than that. So, let me now just say how we win. You know Iowa's battleground. You guys are very, very used to this. In Virginia, we're kind of new to the game. We were uncompetitive for a very long time. Now, we're suddenly really relevant too. And I tell you, if I had to choose, I'd rather be relevant. It's a lot of fun. You get candidates coming and everybody making their case, but it also means when you're battleground and it's close, that means the best work has to be done. You know, the best work has to be done. And it's going to come down to you all as volunteers. Y'all, well, I say y'all. Can I say y'all here? I can say y'all. Okay, it's going to come down to y'all as volunteers because, as I said earlier, all this negative ads and the super PACs and all of that, that's one thing. But most people, they've kind of started to tune that out a little bit, which means the voters are actually kind of smart. They realize that's probably not necessarily true. But I believe this to my core. People still are looking for a word of wisdom and a word of education from somebody that they trust. Politics is important. This is an important choice, and people do want to talk about it. And a word from somebody they trust, a friend, a coworker, somebody they go to church with, somebody they go to school with, a neighbor, a respected local official, a word from somebody they trust, or even a volunteer you don't know. If you're on the phone and you're trying to make up your mind and somebody calls and they're a volunteer, you know they're giving up something that they could be doing something else. They're taking the time because it matters to them. So to volunteer here in the closing stretch, this is worth 100 times the TV ads that will be on TV. And that's why it's so important that you're here and so important what you're doing. I imagine almost all of you are already signed up and being given volunteer shifts, etc. But if you are not, please text TOGETHER to 47246. TOGETHER to 47246. And the fantastic Clinton team here in Iowa will pull you in and find a way to help us win this race. And that will be really important. I feel good about where we are right now. I'll be honest, as we're getting here, getting near Labor Day when the real sprint starts, I feel pretty good about where we are. Feel pretty good about the polls. But it's been a season of surprises. Primaries worked out different than some people thought. Some polls turned out to be wrong. Some pundits made predictions that turned out to be wrong. I don't think many people thought the GOP would nominate Donald J. Trump to be their nominee. It's been a season of surprises. And so what that means is there may be more surprises. There are going to be twists and turns. Polls that looked good will look bad. And in Iowa, it's very close. You're one of our closest states right now. One of our closest states. And so what that means is, while what we're seeing should give us the energy that confidence gives you, there can be no sense of complacency about this, because the stakes are just too high for our economy, for our role in the world, and for whether we have a community of respect rather than a community of division. Here's a little tip that I use, and I'll close. I've had a pretty fortunate electoral history. I've run 8 races, and I've won 8 races. And I'm not going to lose the 9th one. I'm not going to lose the 9th one. I'm not going to. Now, before you feel too impressed, let me tell you, I barely win my races. I mean, I have no fingernails, people, because I chew them off. I win very close races. And in fact, here's a career tip for any young person in this audience. If you're a barely likable enough person, think about politics. You just have to get 51%. I mean, it's a good profession for the barely likable enough. But here's why I have been able to win, and I see this same determination and steel in Hillary Clinton as we're out campaigning together. As I've looked at her entire career of serving women and families, here's how we're going to win. I always go into a race and I say this to myself: I'm the underdog till they call me the winner. I am the underdog until they call me the winner. You've got to have that discipline of considering yourself the underdog, no matter what the polls say, no matter what the pundits say, no matter what the news of the day is about some crazy thing going on the other side. I am the underdog until they call me the winner. This will be a tough race. I started off by telling you I'm proud to be a strong, supportive man on a ticket to elect the first woman. If it had been easy to elect a woman president of the United States, it would have been done already. So this will be a tough race. If you're trying to be the first to do anything, I bet everybody in this room has had the experience of trying to be the first to do something, of having somebody tell you you couldn't do it, of having somebody saying, well, I like you, but you're probably not going to be successful at this. Hillary Clinton has faced that again and again and again, and she never backs down. She can get beaten, but she never backs down. So we are not going to back down. We're going to consider ourselves the underdog till we are declared the winner. We are counting on Iowa in a big way to go with the winner. That winner is Hillary Clinton. We're going to make history on November 8th. And then we will work together, Iowa, to make history and make the Clinton presidency enormously successful for this country. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your help. Let's go win. Thanks.